Built for More podcast, Joby Martin, Pastor Joby Martin. I am Denny Thompson. I'm excited about this one too, Joby. I know I say that every time, but man, these dudes are just good dudes. I think the whole world's seeing that right now. We're joined right now by Payton Thorne from
What's going
Auburn.
on, guys?
Don't really know what's next for Payton, but we know he's from Auburn. That's a fact, right, Payton?
That's right. From Chicago, at Auburn the last 2 years, and going from there.
Yeah. So Joby, Payton is son of a coach, right? He's a coach's son. He started out at Michigan State, originally from Chicago, like he said, in high school. Started out from Michigan State, ended up in playing SEC ball the last 2 years in Auburn. And another guy that is unsure, which we love, is a little bit unsure about the future right now, going through the draft process, waiting to hear where his next home is going to be. So I'm excited to get into this a little bit with all the uncertainty. And Payton, you need to know, by the way, Joby Martin is one of the biggest SEC fans and Georgia fans that exist on this planet today.
All right, well, Georgia fan, that kind of skews things a little bit then, I guess, for me.
That's it. Go Dogs. How's life in the SEC? How did it compare to that Northern ball?
It was good. It was definitely different. It was warmer, which was nice. I'm back here home in Chicago, and so it's colder than I remember. This is the time of year where it gets annoying. It's like, it's supposed to be spring now, so let's go ahead and warm it up a little bit. But it was good. I enjoyed it down there. Auburn's a fun town. It's a small town. It's one of those that, like, if the university wasn't there, there's really nothing there. So I understand in the state of Alabama why, everybody is either Auburn or Alabama, and that's, there's a few lakes, and I guess there's the beach a few hours south. But other than that, there's not much happening in Alabama. So it was fun to be a part of that. And, playing in the Big Ten, I felt like when there were divisions and conferences, I felt like I played in the second best division in football, the Big Ten West and then the SEC East when I got down there. Or no, sorry, I flipped those, I think. But you guys know what I was saying?
Yeah, we know what you mean. Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in college football. It's hard to keep up. When they played Georgia, was it 2 years ago, Payton?
Yep. Yeah, 2 years ago.
At Auburn, we talk about all the time just the environment that day. Payton, you want to kind of, because you guys were leading deep into the third quarter, into the second half?
Yeah, I'd have to look back at it, but it was either tied or we were either winning in the fourth quarter. I think it was tie game with like 2 minutes to go. And so, it was obviously it's a huge rivalry game, as everybody on both sides of that know. But I mean, it was rocking. I remember sitting there either in the third or the fourth quarter on the sideline, and it was a third down, and just thinking, like, goodness gracious, this might be the loudest I've ever heard any stadium. And I've played in some, pretty great environments. So it shows the Auburn people and the Auburn fans that they don't mess around. So it was a lot of fun playing in that game.
And I confirmed that with Carson too. He also confirmed. He's like, yeah, dude, it was absolutely rocking that day. So SEC football passion, man. It's a fun thing to be involved with, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah. It starts early in game day. You got that Tiger Walk, and then it lasts through the whole day.
It's not fun for us. It drives us crazy. We all get sick and get nervous, and Georgia's got one of those in us every year. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter what we're favored by or whatever. I mean, this year was against Georgia Tech in like 7 overtimes or something ridiculous. We should win that game by 1,000. And they're trying to give me a heart attack on a Saturday night when I got to get ready to preach the next day. It's crazy.
I bet that one kept you up for a little bit. That was I remember watching.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was at that one. That was insane too. But that's the great thing about college football, man. It's like the drama that's just involved, and we're going to get to kind of your journey moving forward with the NFL. But let's spend some time on kind of who Payton Thorne is. Like you played obviously high school in Illinois. Was the dream always having a coach as dad? Was the dream always Division I major college football? How did that kind of shape your life early? What was the goal early when Payton was young?
Honestly, it was just football in general. It was really the NFL. I that was always my dream, honestly, since I could walk. And then as I got older, the dream was to play at the college level. You start watching, the hype videos when I was like 10, on YouTube and whatever. And I remember some of those vintage highlight films of, some compilations of different teams across the country. And so I never really had a team living in Chicago. There wasn't really, Illinois wasn't really any good. They had like one good year when I was really young. Northwestern would pop off once every 5 years. But other than that, I kind of would team up with Wisconsin, definitely Michigan State. But I was one of those kids that was Oregon, Boise State. I had a million different jerseys growing up. I think at one point I had like 25 different jerseys that I would wear to school. Like that was my pride back when I was like, 7. But yeah, basic facts, like you said, I'm from just outside Chicago. Dad was a coach. Grandpa was a coach. I have a great family here. I got 2 younger sisters. My mom is an incredible support for me as well and has taught me so much over the years. And as I get older, you realize more and more how much your mom did for you as you get older. And so I'm learning more and more as time goes on, all the amazing things that she did for me and my sisters, as well as my dad. And then, my path was football, baseball, basketball growing up. I played 3 sports all through high school. Wouldn't trade that. I'm a believer in playing multiple sports. And as I've gotten older and talked with guys like Tom at Cortex, I learned different movements from baseball and from basketball as well that translate in football, that guys that don't play those sports, you don't see very often the way their body moves or flexibility from other sports. So that was cool. Something my dad always preached to me. So I always enjoyed competing as well. But yeah, then went to Michigan State. Enjoyed my time at Michigan State. Graduated from there. I love that place. Love East Lansing. And then some things happened that ended up leading me to Auburn. And it was a quick decision to go to Auburn. I really wasn't planning on leaving, to be honest. And it wasn't necessarily anything that happened at Michigan State, but there was an opportunity that presented itself. And, I thought that was what was best after talking with the people close to me to go to Auburn. And, I felt like that's where the Lord was calling me. And, I don't regret it. We didn't win as many games as I had hoped, but I definitely do not regret it. Met a lot of great people down there, had a lot of great experiences like that Georgia game. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pull that out, but there were a lot of great memories created at Auburn. And, now it's on to the next step.
He touched on a couple things we haven't talked about, Joby. The first thing is down here, man, we forget if you grow up in Chicago, you grow up in New York, you grow up somewhere else, man, the NFL is a big deal. Down here, it's like college steals the show. And it's so weird to us to hear somebody say, oh, no, I didn't really have a college team growing up. That's just not the way it is down here, is it?
Yeah. I mean, we live and die college football for sure. And then we like, we're Jaguars fans because I am because, they're the hometown team. But there's just not much at stake because you could go like 8-8 and still make the playoffs. Yeah. And, these days with a 12-team playoff in college football, it's you got a little bit of leeway. But up until last year, like if you're a Georgia fan, if you lose one game, you're like, well, this season is terrible, and I guess we'll have to wait till next year. So it just feels like there's more at stake every single week.
The second thing that he touched on too was playing multiple sports. We haven't talked about that on here. That's interesting because I grew up the same way, Payton. I grew up and I played baseball and I ran track and I played basketball. Wasn't very good at it. Played football, like literally whatever the season was, I played. That's kind of gone away, and I'm not hating on it. It's kind of where we are, just in the big scheme of the monetization of every level of sports. But just talk about growing up playing all the different sports. And Joby, I don't know what your experience growing up was, but just about every friend that I had came from a different sport that I played growing up.
Yeah. My dad was like, if you don't play a sport, you got to get a job. So I played football and wrestled and played baseball, but a part of it was to avoid some cruddy job, Yeah. What was your favorite, Payton? I know you obviously played football and that might be what you were best at, but what was your favorite?
Yeah, my favorite was always football. To be honest, until probably like mid sophomore year or my junior year of high school, football was probably my third sport. Honestly, I was best at baseball and then probably better at basketball than I was at football too. But I always knew that football was what I wanted to do. Well, not always, but as I grew up, I realized football is what I wanted to do, and I think I had an opportunity to do that, and I think I had an opportunity to play the other two, possibly in college, maybe not as high in basketball, but I felt like I could have, if I really would have taken baseball seriously. I kind of got to a point where, one of the travel coaches basically sat me and my dad down. We had a meeting with them at this, bigger team here in the Midwest, and guy basically said like, hey, we want you to you're gonna have to drop a sport to go all in on this. And my dad's like, well, he's not doing that. And I was in agreement with that. And he's like, well, I mean, is he even, how good is he at football? My dad's like, well, he's already got an offer to play football, so he's not dropping football. And the guy's like, oh crap,
Yeah.
okay. So baseball kind of fell off there, but yeah, I really enjoyed playing all three. I think it, like you guys said, you're always doing something, you're always competing. And 7-on-7 is all great. I know a lot of guys do that, and I tried that for a little bit, but I quit because our coach would like stand behind me and tell me where to throw the ball. I'm like, hey, we're not playing a video game here. Let me play. And so that didn't last very long, but I definitely, like I said, I enjoyed it. And I actually was just talking last night with my parents about how, like, I wonder how much it would have changed if it was how it is now. All of these kids are getting offered however much money out of high school. It's like you're literally stepping into professional sports. You're making more than minor league, baseball players and really any other minor league, athlete outside of a signing bonus if you're a second round pick, I guess, or something like that in baseball. But, you're stepping in. I don't know what these guys are getting offered, but I know what guys are making right now that are playing, and they're making way more than we did even last year. And so it's kind of crazy. It's like you got people that can step in your freshman year and all of a sudden literally support their family. So it's like, how would that change? How would that have changed my mindset? I didn't grow up broke, but we definitely did not have much money. So it's like, would that have changed how I did it? I don't know. So it'll definitely be interesting. And, I hope to have a son one day. And, going through all that with him, one day if he chooses to play sports, which I would imagine he will, it'll be interesting.
I think that even before that, Peyton, this started to become a thing because this is a hot topic around the world we live in is are you supposed to specialize or do you play every sport? Well, the simple answer to that is if you are good enough at something, you probably at some point are going to have to specialize because it takes everything you have to compete at the level these guys are trying to get to. And so back in our day, like I could play 3 sports and I wasn't falling behind. But the reality of this thing is, and if you're a parent listening to this, the odds are your kid's perfectly fine to play 3 sports. I'm going to say it the positive way.
Yeah.
But there are probably 5%, 10% of these guys who there comes time to make a business decision. And I don't necessarily mean now money. I mean for your future. What is it that I need to specialize in? And what is it that I need to really hone my craft in on? And I don't know. It's just, I don't know if that's a sad reality. It's just a reality of now. It's just there's very few people that can go football, basketball, baseball, and do that at a level that they can maintain and continue to improve and keep up with everybody else. There's very, very few people that can do that these days.
Yeah, and especially in baseball. I mean, you take one season off of hitting, and it's almost like it's over. Like there's no coming back.
Yep.
I mean, you look at a guy like Michael Jordan, the greatest athlete of all time, and he can't hit a major league baseball, because he had all those seasons off. Or Tim Tebow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he made a run at it, but just can't get it done. And I would imagine there may be some positions in football. Quarterback ain't one of them. Like there are some just athletic positions out there. I don't know, call it defensive end or whatever. Yeah, and maybe playing basketball or something will help you in some footwork, but I would imagine quarterback at your level, it's just a year-round job.
Yeah, it's crazy. There are some guys that do it. I think Ole Miss's, quarterback here coming up, the lefty, he's like pitching, which I don't even know how that's possible. I don't know how his arm is alive right now. He must be one of those guys that just his arm has been used to throwing all the time. And like I can throw a football. Most quarterbacks I think are like this. You can throw a football all day. But you start throwing a baseball, there's a cap on how many times you can throw a baseball. That football limit is way up there. You got to throw 1,000,000 balls. But with the baseball being so much lighter, it's like, yeah, if you go pitch 90 pitches, your arm's going to be, you can't really do much the next day. And so it'll be interesting to see, how he does. I think he's playing well in baseball. I haven't really followed him, but I saw, something on Instagram or something like that of him. But yeah, that'll be interesting.
So, Peyton, when did you realize that you had what it takes to be a major Division I quarterback?
Probably my first offer was my sophomore year. And so when I got that, it was like, okay, this is, I am good enough. I do, I believe I'm good enough now. I have confirmation that I am good enough to play. And then my junior year gathered some more offers, but I still didn't have any Power 5 offers until my senior year. And then NC State came and their OC came to one of our games, ended up offering me, and then Michigan State came shortly after that. And so ended up going to Michigan State, and then, probably my freshman year on the scout team, honestly. I was fortunate to play on the scout team. I got to play against a good defense that year, and Those guys were great to play against. And then two of my best friends were also on the scout team who I played with in high school. So we had a blast doing that. But, during that time, making some throws and hearing from, defensive guys and defensive coaches, when they say stuff like they said, it's like, okay, I can do this. And at that point, it was just about working and getting me to where I needed to go. And because I played three sports, also I didn't meet anybody like Denny or Will or Tom growing up. My quarterback coach was my dad literally my whole life, and he was a really good quarterback as well. But we realized this, within the last year, everything that I've been taught by the guys I've been working out with, Denny and Will and Tom as well with the biomechanics, everything that I have like formed my quarterbacking into is how my dad threw the ball all when he was playing. And I did not throw the ball like that, but he could not like describe it in the way that, he didn't know exactly why he threw it the way he did. He just threw it. And so we look back at like pictures, and I used to watch his highlights when I was young. And it's like, you do it exactly how they're like, my dad could rip it. And it's like, if you could have just sat me down and said, okay, do it exactly like I do it. I would have been in really good shape. But there was a lot of trial and error growing up. And so my transformation in college, I look back sometimes at my freshman and sophomore year, and it's like, holy cow, I've come a long way. And so that's part of what, gives me confidence moving forward as well, as I feel like I'm on an upward trajectory, and I feel like I've gotten better every single year. And, stats don't always say that, but I know in my heart that, I'm playing, my talent level is at the highest it's ever been. And then also, your mind gets better every year. And the more snaps you get, the more you see. So, it was definitely, like I said, it's cool to go back and look at old videos. It's like, man, this did not look good, and now it's looking a lot more refined, and the feedback I'm getting from people confirms that.
Do preachers go back and watch tape, Joby?
Yeah, I mean, I watch it every week because we have a Thursday and a Sunday service. So I watch the Thursday night service to get ready for Sunday. And I very much watch it like you would watch game film, because there's a bunch of things that you don't notice about yourself if you don't watch it on film, or you pick up some like crutches that you begin to lean on, and you're like, that's not good. Or, say things that you don't mean to say, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I do. A lot of guys don't want to, but anybody that wants to get better has got to put in the work, whatever it is.
Do you go back and watch like old sermons? Do you go back and watch other people from back in the day? Because what Payton, I'm getting somewhere with that. I'm curious what the answer from every profession is on this. I mean, are there guys that you modeled preaching after? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, there are definitely some different styles of preachers that you don't want to mimic, but you do want to emulate. You want to be your own guy and be original, and have the Lord speak through you. So it's not copy and paste. It's a lot of study and prayer. But there are some techniques and some styles and some folks that you just, I mean, like I still listen to a lot of Billy Graham. I mean, does it get any better? Right? The guy was just clear and concise and to the point, and he just said it, especially his old stuff. I mean, he was mean back in the day. I love it. And so I ingest, like I would imagine nobody watches more film than a quarterback, right? And so I take in a lot of preaching. It's almost like if you want to build muscle, you just got to take in protein way more than anybody says you need. Well, in my world, I just ingest a whole bunch of preaching for a bunch of reasons. But a part of it is to listen to the art of some other people preaching so that I can get better.
Because Payton just said something that I think we can probably take a number of different ways. But, you go back and you watch guys like Brett Favre and Dan Marino, and like these guys were slinging it, man. Like they were throwing it a certain way. And then the trainers and the smart guys had to get involved and try to make everybody a machine and a robot. You got to throw this way and you got to do it this way. That's not the answer. Like, that's not the answer. Everybody is their own individual person. Everybody's body is different. Everybody moves a different way. Nobody should be exactly the same as anybody else. And so I think that's very interesting. You said that in a very good observation, Payton, because in the football context, like we're talking about, but this can go across many, many lines. Sometimes people just screw it up. Sometimes teachers, sometimes coaches, sometimes like they're just stubborn. They get something in their head that's not even true. right? It doesn't even make sense. And it ends up affecting other people because of their opinion or their thought on something that is not based in anything. And I think that in general is true of a lot of different things, especially in football right now. A lot of overcoaching in the world today is my point. A lot
Yeah.
of overcoaching in a lot of different areas of life going on right now. What was your experience? Like college football, it flies by, right? Like I'm looking at your timeline, 2019 redshirted, 2020, you played in 4 games as a backup, 2021, you were named the starter. Like this flies by, right? Like 2019 pre-COVID, you're one of the last generations that we can talk to about playing during that COVID year. But during those 5 years, man, when you look back, what's your memory of college football going to be?
Oh man, there's so many different memories. I'd say the first ones in 2019 is coming in with that class, and it really is, like you said, being like the last group of guys who, were before any money. The people were making money, and like you guys said, down here in the South, some guys were getting paid some money, but most of us up north, we weren't getting, or at least at Michigan State, I don't think we were getting paid. So there were times when we were broke. I had an IOU sheet we always talk about during COVID. Golf was not fun to me for about a month, so I was losing some money on the course, and I had a little post-it note of everybody I owed because I had no money to my name. And it was funny because the next year was 2021, and NIL pops up out of nowhere. And so we're like, all right, this is sweet. What are we going to do? We're thinking all these different things, how we're going to make money. And then it's like, okay, football will make you the money. Just play football and play well. So we had a good year in 21, and we benefited from it. And that, again, was before any collectives or anything. So we made like real NIL money. And me and my roommate, is also one of my best friends. I live with Cade McDonald, who I played with in high school, who is also going through the draft process right now. And then also Jaden Reed, who's with the Packers. And so, we were able to enjoy NIL and have a lot of deals that we actually did together. And so it was fun. And, looking back at your bank account, in December of 21 versus that year before during COVID, it's like, wow, life can change quick. And my mom does my taxes. She's a CPA. And so we're sitting there and she's like, wow, this is quite the turnaround here. So that was cool. But, so that's a part of the memory, and then really just, living with the guys. I have a lot of memories our freshman year in the dorm. We were on the same hallway. Our dorm was a piece of crap. It was terrible. And so we all got to enjoy that. I remember there was one night we went around, again, love my time at Michigan State, but this dorm, whew, wow. We took, our water smelled terrible. And we're like, this just can't be right. So we went down the hallway one night and we were flipping everybody's water on, and we had a video. And one guy's water was legitimately black. The next guy's water was brown. One guy's water was red somehow. We're like, okay, this just can't be right. But it's times like that where everyone's messing around, and you remember that, and then you remember the road trips too, for sure. You remember the plane rides. That's one for sure that'll stick, is the plane rides. And coming in after a game, there's nothing better than winning on the road, and getting in that airplane on the way back. It's dark out, and you land, and some games you're not getting back till 4 a.m. So, like I said, a ton of memories, rivalry games. But it was a fun experience. It's something like you said, I did dream about college football. It wasn't just the NFL. And then you have people that kind of tell you, hey, do you know how big of a deal it is at what you're doing? Especially people down in the South, and you don't want to over glorify it at all. There are much cooler things in life, but for us guys who grow up in football, this is about as big as it gets, and you got 90,000 people, 105,000 people coming to these games. And it's like, it's pretty cool. And I had somebody come up to me. I was talking to some kids outside after a game, all the kids hang around and people want autographs and whatnot and want to talk to you. And, I always made it a point to, try not to talk to everybody, because if you talk to everybody, you're going to be there for forever. So like, but be nice and give people, what they're asking for. And somebody just asked me, like, hey, like, imagine if you were 10 and you were going up to Auburn's quarterback, how cool would you have thought that was? And I don't think anything else. It's like, I'm just me. I'm here with my family that's always been with me. I'm just living my life that I feel like this is just what it is. I feel like I'm the same as I was when I was, 14. And so you kind of take a step back every once in a while and be like, wow, this is what I've dreamt of. It's what I've prayed of for so long. And so you're extremely fortunate to be at a place like this and get to experience those things. So, all of that, are memories that you'll never forget.
This generation is interesting of college football players because they didn't sign up for this. Like he alluded to it. I mean, these guys all got recruited, and when you were talking about that, I'm thinking back when the transfer portal became a thing. I don't feel like nobody advertised that at all. It was just all of a sudden, it was like I remember getting a call from an agent, and it was telling me about this transfer portal. I'm like, what are you even talking about? And I'm pretty inundated into football. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then like he said, like Payton said, you heard about this NIL, and I remember the discussion being like, is this even going to work? Is anything actually going to come over this? Like, and then all of a sudden it's just a thing. And this generation is the only one, like you guys played in both systems. And so I'm going to ask you kind of a loaded question because you're one of few that can qualify. Is college football worse because of NIL, or is that not really a thing?
That's hard to say. I wouldn't say it's worse. I think right now we'll look back in 20, 30 years and say, man, that was a mess when we didn't have any rules on anything. Like at some point, everyone needs to just agree. Let's go ahead and throw it out. I can definitely say this now because I'm not in it anymore. I'm not in a school, but like, if you get recruited and you're getting paid that money, you're not there to go to school. I'm sorry, but you're not. Like we can fake it like, oh, I'm here to go to school and get my degree. And yes, that is definitely part of it. And a lot of kids, they wouldn't have that chance to get a degree. So that is great for them. Go ahead and take care of that. You don't throw it to the side. But like, you're not there to go to school. I'm sorry. You're there to play football. And when you spend the amount of hours you spend in the football facility, going through meetings, going through workouts, you're there all year round. You are there to play football. So let's, all these people that try to make it seem like you're not, that's not true. And again, when 90,000 people show up to watch you play, when the stadiums are bigger than the NFL stadiums are, you're there to play football. You're not there to go to school. And so school is, people would always say, school first, football second. And so, I think that is part of it. And when this money is getting involved, it's like there has to be someone has to step in and say, hey, this is minor league football now. Okay. In the other sports, basketball players are going to make good money. And, people get upset with this too, but it's like, people talk about it. At the end of the day, when there's not many people coming to watch, whatever sport it may be, it's just not the same. It's just not. And, as a football player saying that, you're like, oh, you're not a good guy or whatever. And it's like, okay, but it's just different. And so I think people have to say, okay, this is minor league football. Let's get some contracts in there. So you can't transfer every semester, because that's not how professional sports works. And then also like there has to be some type of incentives. You can't go fully guaranteed contracts for everybody, or else guys show up and they don't work hard. I've seen that. A guy shows up and gets his money and he like legitimately stops trying anything. It's like, hey man, this isn't that much money. Like it's great money for you in college, but this isn't going to last you at all. And you'll blow through it so fast, especially with that mindset. And so it's like getting contracts and all that, and refining all those details, and then it'll be I think a well-oiled machine in some form of fashion. But there's so many things I could get real into that on because we've talked about it a ton. Salary cap and all that. But I think there has to be some rules like people talked about, and then people have to be real, and there has to be some type of committee that gets involved that enforces the rules, because as everybody knows, the NCAA was enforcing 1 out of every 10, and then the one school that gets caught doing whatever, it's like, hey, everybody else is doing this, but you're somehow on a number of things, not everything, but like some schools go, hey, the school down the road is doing the same thing. Why are we getting in trouble? So
Joby, what's you're more than a fan, but you are a fan. What's your view on NIL and transfer portal from a fan's perspective?
I'm glad you asked. Like, I don't have Bible verses about this, but I do think we do live in America, and we're in a capitalistic society. And I think it's easy for the average fat fan sitting on the couch far from the game to be a purist, because they don't have any skin in the game. And the further away you are from something, the simpler the solution seems. And the moment everybody wants to be like, all these guys are amateurs, cool. Then pay the coaches like amateurs too. Don't pay them. See what happens.
That's a good
I
point.
coached amateur sports. I never got paid for coaching my son in high school and middle school. We just did it for the love of the game, right? So, Peyton, you're right. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The other thing is there's only a small percentage of these big-time college players that are going to make the NFL. And so how in the world can you tell these guys when they're at the most productive point of their life that they will ever be, and they are the product that is creating these hundreds of millions of dollars every semester, that they don't get a part of it? It doesn't make sense in any other industry. Like, can you imagine if some random group came in and said coaches of quarterbacks can only make this amount of money? And you'd be like, what are you talking about, man? I've got my own private business. I do what I want. So you just got to call it what it is. And then sometimes they're like, yeah, but we give these people, a degree. Yeah. In what? For a certain percentage of people, it's a real gift and it makes a lot of sense. For a whole bunch of people, they have degrees that they'll never use, and they couldn't have gotten into that school anyway. So you just got to be honest about that too. Now, I think I'm pro NIL, and there probably needs to be some rules, whatever. As a Georgia fan, I'm really glad it happened because I was real afraid we were going to get popped one day. So, but I do think somehow you can't have NIL and the portal wide open at the same time. So that seems to be what's creating all the problem, because now guys are just shopping. They're just and I hate to even quote Nick Saban, but now that he retired, I can actually like him. But he said a part of the reason he got out of it is because it switched from being a job of transformation to transaction. And he was like, that's not what I signed up for as a football coach. So if there was some kind of limit on the transfer portal, not only the amount of times you could transfer, but also it's a little bit weird to me. I mean, dude, Florida's best player on their team transfers to Georgia to then go beat Florida the next year. That's weird. They got to fix that somehow. You know what I mean? Yeah. So maybe you can't transfer within your own conference, or maybe you can't transfer to a team that you're going to play in the next 2 or 3 years. But I'm pro people that create a product that has value getting paid, as long as the product's legal, which football is.
Well, go ahead, Joby. I'm sorry.
But they got to put some kind of limit on the transfer portal thing, especially because of the NIL. And I don't think they should penalize kids like where you got to sit out. I think it just maybe kind of determine where you can go or limit that a little bit, something like that.
Yeah, and I think from the NIL perspective, I think a guy like Payton, like let's take this to NFL terms. If I'm an NFL team and I'm looking at Payton Thorne and I see a guy who made some NIL money, played some big-time college football, I'm going to follow that money. I'm going to see what he did with it. And guys like Payton are doing the right things with it. They're using it to make themselves better, to put some – I don't know what you're doing with your money, but I know this much. His frequency that he came to Jacksonville correlated with him making money. So he took that money, made himself better, dug deeper into his craft. The product on Saturday, the actual product itself, in my opinion, is as good as it has ever been. The quality of the product, the quality of the athletes, how well everybody's coached, how well everybody is prepared. And as a consumer, which I'm not, but as a consumer, I would think that I would like that. I would think that when I turn on my TV, I would like that. One other point on this is when you look at college basketball, Peyton, you mentioned this a couple years ago, everybody was screaming and yelling about the one and dones. Now, what little I get on social media, everybody's like, well, this whole team's 23 years old. Well, which way do you want it? Like, make up your dang mind. Which way do you want it? Like, do you want a 19-year-old going to the NFL or to the NBA, or do you want a seasoned, and I'm air quoting, seasoned vet, which is really what we're talking about in football as well. We're talking about 5th and 6th year guys who know what they're doing, and by the way, can help that 18-year-old and that 19-year-old come around. I look at this as a net positive in a very big way in college athletics. And I'm not just saying that because my income increased. I've seen the product on the field get much, much better. Do you agree or disagree with that, Peyton?
I would definitely agree. I think that, like we talked about earlier, the teams that were paying people, and it was, I'm sure it was all over the country. It wasn't just the South, but, that were paying guys illegally back when it was happening, that's a lot easier to recruit those guys. But now when everybody can have money, it's different. And so you see more guys going to different places. And so the talent is more spread out, which is going to, it's going to become more like the NFL. What do you see in the NFL? Everybody has similar talent. So anybody can beat anybody, like they say, on any given Sunday. And so games are extremely competitive. I think that you see that more in college football now because the talent is more evenly spread. Basketball, unfortunately, you saw this year wasn't a ton of upsets because of, I think, the transfer portal. When you can pay guys, if I'm a mid-major guy and I go crazy for a year and a school offers me $500,000, like, how can you tell that guy, no, you're not doing that? It takes a lot of loyalty to say, I'll take 20, or I don't even know what, maybe nothing, to stay at my mid-major school versus go get money that, if I'm smart with it, can change my life. Why, and play at a place where there's going to be 15,000 people watching me in an arena. Like, why would that dude not do that? And so you're going to see more competition at the level that it's at. So you're probably not going to see as many, smaller mid-major schools making a run in the tournament. And if you do, that team is probably going to get gutted the next year. They're probably going to be terrible the next year because all their players and their coach are probably gone. And so it's different in football versus basketball. I think that is what's going to happen in football. I think there's going to be the super conference. I think that is probably what needs to happen, and make it, NFL 2.0, have whatever it is, 60 teams or something, make some conferences and whatnot, and then make a salary cap if they want, which is a good idea, but it has to be strictly enforced, because if you say, okay, the salary cap is 20 million, okay, now if it's not enforced, I'm just going to have my salary cap and I'm going to backdoor everybody else. If I really need this recruit, I'm going to talk to my guy on the phone who is a billionaire and say, hey, I need an extra million for this guy. And all of a sudden their salary cap's 30 when everybody else is trying to play by the rules at 20. Now it just is the same thing over and over again. So, like, they have to come in and say, okay, this is the real deal. We know what everybody was doing before. Like, now it's done. If you do this, you're going to get penalized, like real penalized, and so I think that's coming eventually, and I think that if they do that, then it'll be really efficient and really fun to watch.
There's a fine line between being loyal and being a fool.
Yeah, that's right.
Very, very fine line there. So yeah, and I didn't mean to make this whole NIL discussion. It's just kind of came up. But Joby, Payton, I met Payton a couple years ago. He's been training with Will for a little while, and Payton's one of those guys that right when you meet him, you just kind of know, like, this is a Christian guy. Like, just the way he moves, leadership qualities that he has before you ever see him interact with anybody else, just the way that he diligently works. And so I gravitated towards Payton, fairly quickly, became one of my favorite guys. And then when you watch him play and you just see the tenacity that this guy plays with, he's who you want the face of your franchise to be. So Payton, talk a little bit about just your relationship with your Christian relationship, your relationship with God, and what that has meant to you through your athletic journey.
Yeah, it's meant everything to me. Like you said, it's been a part of my life since I've been born. Honestly, my family, my extended family are all believers, and that's a big part of our life. I also have a mentor, Kofi Hughes, who I'm extremely blessed for, who has, been awesome for me growing up. Met him in high school, and he's one of my best friends now, and he is incredibly strong in his faith, and we've lived very similar lives as well through college. He was also a college football player, played in Indiana, and so we have connected on a lot of things like that as well. And so, like you said, it's been a huge part of my life. I would not have gotten through my college career without it. The amount of times I prayed, and praying, not even football involved, but also then through the battles of football, and different things that come up through your career. If you don't have a firm foundation to rely on and fall back on, it's really hard. And I think about that with so many people in life, and again, not even in football, other hardships of life, where it's like, man, if you got nothing to fall back on, and nothing that makes you who you are, that must be really hard to go through life like that. And so for me, I'm thankful for my parents who have, introduced me to all that. And then, I have my own individual relationship with the Lord as well. I think every person needs to have that. And so my faith has grown over the years. I have different perspectives than I've had before. And I actually just had, a really awesome, I guess you could call it breakthrough a little bit. I don't know how to really describe it. And this was just a couple of days ago with Kofi. I was driving back from Jacksonville, actually, back home. We talked on the phone for like an hour about something that we've kind of talked about before, but excuse me. But yeah, it's definitely been an insurmountable part of my life, and I'm so thankful for everything the Lord's blessed me with, and everything that is still to come.
Joe, but he just leave us hanging on the breakthrough?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask, man. Can you share whatever you're willing to?
Yeah, he would do a better job of describing it than me. But I asked him. I was on my way home. I asked him. I texted him. I said, "Hey, what's the best book you've ever read?" Because I'm on these long road trips. I'm a road tripper. I've driven to Jacksonville from Michigan actually before. That's a 15-hour trip, and I've had some of my best like learning experiences in the car because I listen to either podcasts or books a lot of time because you guys know music gets old after a little while. So he texted me. He said, "I believe it's called A Normal Christian Life is the book," and he said it changed the way he thinks about our relationship, like our duty here on earth almost. And he says deep. So I started listening to it. I got through the first chapter and I said, yeah, this is pretty deep. This is a book I need to sit down and like read. But then we talked about basically like there's so many people have these battles about, what can I do for the Lord? What am I, what is my job here on earth? And you hear so many different explanations of that. And, something that I've battled with as a guy who grew up in church, who knows a lot of the stories in the Bible, who's read the Bible, a guy like me, the easiest or one of the best ways that I've learned, and this was kind of the breakthrough that the devil will get to you, is through guilt. And so many times, all these things that you should and should not do. The church teaches you that all the time. And so all of a sudden, when you feel like you've sinned or you keep tripping up on something that you know you shouldn't be doing or have wanted to improve on, after a little while, a guy like me who was growing up in sports too and growing up with a coach as a dad, it's like after you mess up a certain amount of times in football, you're done. We're either putting you on the bench or you're cut. And so it's so hard to, get those two separated, where it's like the Lord has said, you're good. I've covered your sins. I died for you. And, you were made perfect. And there is no guilt necessarily. It's so hard to say that to people because it's like, no, there is guilt. Guilt is a good thing in a lot of ways because like it holds, it's your moral compass, I guess. But if you get so caught up in guilt and you dwell in guilt, all of a sudden you walk away from the Lord. It's like, I can't do this. And that's what people talk about so often with like the rule-based Christianity. And, there's different people that get so caught up in rules. And yes, those rules are there for us, and I think to God, our moral compass. But I think what this book, and again, I haven't read it yet, so I'm excited to get through the whole thing. But it's this concept of understanding like I am righteous. I am the Lord's child. And, Jesus, it talks about not I, but he who lives through me. And it's like dying to yourself. You talk about dying to yourself and letting the Lord live through you. And it's like, well, if I take myself away and let the Lord just live through me, that is my best life. And it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of all over the place here again. Like I said, it's better to listen to him describe it, or maybe after I tell the story a few more times. But it's like this guilt gets you. People who have been in the Christian life, guilt, I feel like, gets to those people. And a lot of times, all of a sudden, you stop reading, you stop praying as much because you're guilty. You don't want to go to the Father and be like, here I am again. I did it again. At some point, our human minds tell us, no, that's enough. But it doesn't make sense. The Lord's promises and the Lord's gift to us, it doesn't make sense to our human mind. His grace and his mercy, it's like, you're perfect. You came down to earth and lived the perfect life. Like, I only have so many strikes here. I can't keep messing up. But he says, no, that's not it. That's not it. Oh, yeah. Just come be with me. Let me take it over and let me change you. If you try your hardest to fix something, you're going to fail every time. I've learned that in my life. If you try, you're going to fail. And so you're better off just relying. You have to rely on the Lord and say, you change me. And I think that's where real change happens. So my long-winded answer to that, I tried to, get as much communicate as possible.
Payton, that was just all gospel-centered truth is what you were talking about. Because what you're talking about, there's a difference between conviction and condemnation. Conviction is a gift from God. That's when you are about to head down a road you shouldn't, and the Spirit of God taps you on the shoulder and goes, whoa, 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 you need to change direction. That's conviction.
Right.
Condemnation is when the enemy lies to you. Condemnation is a building term. It means unfit for use. And the enemy wants you to think because of what you have done, you are no longer useful to God, so you're benched or you're cut. But Romans 8:1 says, therefore now there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And some people might think, like when you say we're righteous, they might think, whoa, what does he mean?
Right.
Well, 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, God made him who was without sin to be sin for us, that we would be made the righteousness of God. That when you put your faith in Christ on the cross, that when he died on the cross, somehow it counted for me. He takes the full payment for our sin, and we get the credit for his perfect or righteous life. The old dead theologians would call it the great exchange. It's called double imputation, that our sin is imputed to him on the cross, and his perfect life is imputed to us. And so I just say amen to everything that you just said. That when the enemy, here's the difference. Here's when you understand the gospel and you screw up, you think, I need to talk to my dad. I need help. When you don't understand the gospel and you screw up, you think, don't tell dad because I've screwed up. And so if you run away from him, it means you don't know what Jesus did on the cross for you. Now, I'll send you a book. I wrote a book called Run Over by the Grace Train. How the grace of Jesus changes everything about everything about everything. And I'll send you that. I'll have my team send it out to you like ASAP. And the idea is that God loves us just as we are, but he doesn't leave us where we are. And we are saved by grace. But when we encounter the grace of Jesus, he changes us. That definitely doesn't mean that we're perfect overnight. Good gracious. Look who you're talking to. We're not perfect overnight, but over time, he makes us more and more and more like his son. And one day when we get to heaven, we will be glorified and be like him in a new body and a new resurrection.
You know, the thing that I get out of what Payton just said, there's two things. One, this is a common theme. We've had multiple quarterbacks on here. Multiple quarterbacks have talked about reading and digging into their faith more. And for me, I just started doing that probably 6-7 years ago. And my gosh, life is easier that way. But the second thing is that people also talk about having mentors. People also talk about having a discipleship relationship with somebody. You brought it up with you and Brock and y'all's relationship. And now Peyton's bringing it up with, what was his name? Kofi?
Yep. Yes, sir. Kofi.
Yep. And can we spend a minute on that? Both of you, like, can we talk about the importance of having that in your life, probably outside of like a parental figure or something along those lines? Can you kind of tell us the biblical guidance on that, Joby? And
yeah, at our church right now, we just finished studying 1 Timothy, and now we're in Titus. And the idea was that Paul, an older man in the faith, would identify younger men in the faith and grow them up in the faith. And then he tells Timothy that older guys should have some younger guys that they teach to teach some even younger guys than them. That this is a generational passing on. What's crazy is the number of grown men that are such fans of sport, and team sport screams, I need some help. I don't care whoever the best quarterback on the planet is right now. They've got not just one coach. They've got multiple coaches. And we all sit on the couch and think they're our heroes, and then think in our own personal life, we don't need some people to coach us in life and godliness. Well, it is by God's design. And, Peyton, you probably know this too. You really know that you know something when you know how to teach it. Right?
That's exactly right.
Like some skill, some new technique, some biomechanic of a throw. It's one thing to be able to do it. You really know it when you can teach it. Well, the same thing is true in our walk with Christ. I mean, I don't think you really are a disciple until you make disciples, because you don't really know the word until you got to explain it to somebody else. You don't really know the love of God until you've got to help somebody else understand what you have experienced. And so God has designed it this way, that we are supposed to be conduits of the grace of God, not cul-de-sacs. We're not just receivers of it, that we receive and then pass the baton on to an upcoming generation. And that could be somebody, it really doesn't matter how old they are. That just means somebody further along in their faith is helping somebody a little less far along in their faith.
Yeah, you're exactly right on that, and I've run into that. Like you said about being able to teach it. That's something I learned from one of my coaches at Michigan State. He said you need to know our offense so well you could coach the offense. And I got COVID. It was a blessing actually. I learned more football during COVID than ever in my life because I had nothing else to do. And so I got to the point where I literally felt like I could run our offense through install 6. I could get up there and coach it. And then after. Right after I had that talk with Kofi, I called my dad right after and gave him the whole rundown. And I learned I had more like things come to mind as I was talking to my dad about it, because I was like quizzing Kofi, almost not quizzing him, but like I would give the rebuttal, like, okay, what's the world going to say to this? I want to know, okay, well, what's his answer? Because now I'm ready for the answers as well. And so we're just rolling through different scenarios, and I'm like, okay, one of my questions to him was, okay, well, if someone hears that. Basic, the classic answer is, okay, so I can just do whatever I want now and it's all good. And his answer was actually, yeah, I guess you could. But that person, down the road, it's like that person's heart isn't right. The Lord is after our heart in a way, I feel like. And, if your heart is right and you are, dying to yourself daily and you're looking up to the Lord and just saying, do what you want with me. I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to go do this, this, and this. I'm not keeping track of score down here, of how many good deeds I've done. I'm letting you do the deeds through me. You take me where you want me to go, and my life will be incredible, because he knows all. He's in control. Take me to the different places that you need me to go. And so, like I said, I had, different talking points with my dad. I had a couple of different, things kind of mine. I was like, oh man, that makes even more sense. And I talked to Kofi later in the drive again, and we went back and forth again. So it's a cool thing to be able to have, 2 people like that. And then like you were talking about, Denny, with mentorship, my dad has also lived, a lot of things that I lived. And so I had him my whole life to bounce a lot of ideas off of and learn, a ton of stuff from my dad and my grandpa. But there's a certain point, as you guys know, where it's like there's a certain point where a father and a son, like there's some things you might not want to talk about. There's some things that is maybe a little too much, maybe a little too personal to talk about. But then also you have your mentor, who's, Kofi's I think 9 years older than me, and he lived a lot of things that I lived, and so it's like, okay, I can tell this guy basically everything. I can go to him with different problems that maybe he lived with a cell phone. My dad didn't live with a dang cell phone. I'm growing up, So I mean, there's all types of different things that when you have a circle of guys that you trust, you get different perspectives on things from different guys, and ultimately, like you said, you can bounce them off each other. So my dad learned something from me that I learned from Kofi, and vice versa, and all that stuff. So. Yeah, it's great. It's awesome to have a group of people around you. And then, like they say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you surround yourself with good people, and I feel like I have, I look at that question. It's like, well, if I'm the average of those guys, I feel like I'm going to be a pretty good guy and live a pretty good life. So just got to build your circle and be around people that you respect.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, Joby, about the age, right? Like it's a spiritual maturity because, I mean, Ryan Stone has gotten me through some dark times of my life. Who was a, I guess, former pastor at 1122, right?
Yeah,
and
I don't
he's
know.
significantly
He'll always be
younger.
one of our pastors, but yeah.
Yeah.
But he's very, very mature in his faith.
Yeah. And so I just want to make sure I clarify that because you don't always have to go look at an elder or older. In some cases, to your point, Payton, like what you want to talk about, maybe there's a different person for this or a different person for that. I'm like you. I have a dad who will listen to anything, love him to death. Same with my mom. But at the time, I needed what Ryan had. And God put me and Ryan together, and which ultimately led me to Joby as well. So, no, I think it's been a critical part of my life. I'm glad that it came up. And I think that just discipleship, that mentor, whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't be where I'm at without several of those guys just, digging into me with no judgment.
And this is why like raising your family in the local church is so important. Because Payton, you're absolutely right. No matter how close you are to your dad, at some point, especially like those teenage years, there's just some things you're not going to talk to your parents about.
Right.
So what we have tried to do in the life of our children, we have 2 kids. I have a 19-year-old son who's a freshman at Florida State and a 15-year-old daughter who's a freshman in high school. I tried to surround them with some adults that when they don't want to talk to me, then they're going to talk to somebody. I want those somebodies to kind of to say the kinds of things that I would want them to hear, that is going to line up with the word of God. I don't want them just primarily getting advice from their, the idiot they play football with or whatever. I want
Right.
some. So in our world, like my son's been through some tough times recently, and that joker went straight to his high school small group leader, and he graduated high school last year. So he hadn't been in that group in a year and any of that stuff. And he went straight to that guy. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that dude, Josh, is going to pour truth into my son, and my son trusts Josh. And it just sounds different than when it's coming from your dad. So it matters. See, my football coach used to tell me, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So you listen to that, everybody. If you look around and all your friends are idiots, bro, you're going to be an idiot. That is your future. If they're losers, you're going to be a loser. And so way more is caught than taught in this life. And so you're going to catch whatever you're around.
Right.
So let's move back to football for a second here, Payton. So now a little different time of your life, right? Some uncertainty now. Payton's been going through the draft prep process. He's no longer playing at Auburn, run out of eligibility. You don't know what's next, man, but I mean, is that exciting? Is it scary? Is it like, what are your feelings right now as you gear towards, I guess the next month you'll know?
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. I would say the first thing, it's exciting. You get to go through this process. I got to play in the Hula Bowl and the Shrine Bowl, which are 2 good experiences. And you get to meet guys that are also going through the same thing. So that's all fun. You get to do pro day. Got that done, and now it's just about, all right, let's play football. Let's get ready to play some football. So it's exciting. It's something you dreamt of, like I said, a number of times now for your whole life, and so you feel like it's so close. But you just take it one day at a time. You have to say what's important right now. Let me take care of business right now, each and every day. Right now, I got to get set up shop here at my former house, make sure everything's in order so I can be productive here, and that's what's important today. So make sure my habits are good, and then go from there. But like you said, there's definitely uncertainty, and uncertainty isn't necessarily fun. I don't think anybody enjoys uncertainty, but it goes back to what we were just talking about. If I know who's in control of my life, then I can be satisfied with what's going to come, and I know that no matter what comes, whether you get drafted, whether you don't, whether there's a lot of things that could happen. Not to be a pessimist, but not everybody's guaranteed to get to the draft. Who knows? Your life can come to an end at any point, any day, and you have to be thankful for each and every day, and again, just attack every day, and then whatever happens, and I trust the Lord's plan for my life, and I'm still going to work my butt off. I'm not going to say, oh, the Lord's got me, so I'm just going to chill. That's not it. And I'm going to be ready to go when my chance comes, and do whatever I can to help out an organization.
Man, that sounds really good. Sounds really good. If you're able to do that right now, I'm super impressed with that, because Joby, what a weird time. What a weird time Payton, how old are you?
I am 23.
23 years old. No idea where you're going to live in a month and a half. No idea what's ahead. Man, I know where I'm going to be in a month and a half, and I still can't keep my eyes out of the future and away from the past. Just talk about staying present, man. And even while you're playing, right? We talked about this the other day with Brock, of just that, that next play mentality, and being present for everything. And it takes that to achieve excellence. Are you doing that now? Are you finding that you're able to do that now? Talk about, how that serves you when playing the game, and kind of everything around just the being present part of this whole living thing.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate for my head coach, my second head coach at Michigan State, Coach Tuck. I really learned a lot from him and the different people that he brought in. And one of our mottos was keep chopping. That was our motto in 21. And that basically is just next play. And after any bad play, he'd be down the sideline. He would go like this. I'll remember that forever. And number one, on football as a quarterback, when you see your head coach doing that, that's going to help you play a lot better. And then, it's a model for life. It's all about the next play. What can I do about what happened yesterday? And a lot of these things are cliche. You've heard them a lot of times, but it's true. What can I do about yesterday? I can't do anything about yesterday. If I need to apologize for something, sure, you can do that, but you can't change yesterday. And so it's now, what now? And all these people get pissed off about everything. Like, there's a lot of things in the world right now happening that's frustrating. You see things that's like, that doesn't make sense. Why is that the way it is? But it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to sit here and whine about it and be upset? You need to do what you can. And so, whether that's doing your own research and figuring things out yourself and finding different, medications to take, or, all these different things. There's a lot of different areas that you can go with that. But it's for sure in football, you have to get used to it. And when you're a competitor and you get pissed off, you work on the golf course. That's my main spot I work on next play is the golf course. And so, sometimes it's harder than others. I guess that's another multi-sport thing right there. You learn how to deal with being pissed off in baseball. If you have a terrible at bat, you got to wait for 30 minutes for your next at bat. So that's terrible. But yeah, next play is a real thing, and it's real in life too.
Yeah, talk about just this NFL journey, and even like the college side of things from a fan's perspective of obviously being at Auburn. You got the Auburn Alabama game, which I want to get into as well. Like, we'll get into that in a second. I want to hear your thoughts on that. But the other thing is just like, we talk about the passion, and we talk about the money, and we talk about everything involved in college football and the NFL. It's like that because of the passion of the fans. That's the only reason it's like that, right? You can't take the fans away and have all of that. Right. So talk about how you kind of learn to deal with other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, and thoughts that, we can say don't matter, but they, in some way, they get to you. You find out about them. Just talk about learning how to deal with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, especially as a quarterback, you have to understand that if you're going to play at this level, it's part of it. And like you said, you can delete all your social media and not look at anything, and you're still going to see something at some point. And, I deleted my Twitter, I think, after 2021. So I think in 2022, I deleted Twitter. I still don't have it. And so I stopped seeing all that. But something I talked to our young quarterbacks about last year, and man, best quarterback room of all time last year. I mean, the group of guys in there was absolutely incredible. All guys, men of faith, and learned from them. And they're all younger than me. So like you guys were talking about earlier, but something I share with them is like, the first bad game you have, don't look at it. Like, do your best. Don't look at it. The human part of you wants to look at it. You really do want to see what people really have to say. And so I said, don't look at it, because it's going to pollute your brain for the future. Because all of a sudden you're in the middle of a game and you throw 2 picks in the first half, whether you want to or not, there's gonna be a part of your brain that goes to it and it's like, man, I know what they're saying about me. I know what these fans are saying in the stands. I know what they're saying online. I know what these students. I know what these frat dudes are saying. Whatever, you know it, and it does affect you. And I remember my freshman year when I got there, I saw a couple of our guys were like talking back to the fans online, and I'm like, really, guys? Like, are you serious right now? Are you really wasting your time on some fan? Everyone always gives the example of the fat dude in his basement with crumbs on his stomach, but it's like there are people that aren't that bad either who are saying stuff. So it's like at the end of the day, you can't care. Like, you can't. It doesn't matter, because even guys that you respect, even like for me this past year, there was a really successful quarterback that did an analysis of our game. And I don't watch that stuff, but I had one of our teammates like, bro, this guy, he was sticking up for you. Go ahead and watch it. And I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll check it out. So I go watch a couple minutes, and it's like a guy who has had success playing the game, and he knows the game. He even didn't even know what he was talking about in terms of certain things. Because if I'm ever like analyzing a quarterback in the future, I will always include, hey, I don't know what was going on here. Because at the end of the day, he wasn't in our meetings all week. He doesn't know what we were looking at on that play. He doesn't know who read 1, read 2, who read 3 is. A lot of times it's similar across football. But you get into, some of these offenses, and it's like, wait a second, what did you just say? Like, we're reading it like that? Why are we reading it like that? And so it's like, you never know. And so these people who never play football, they really don't know. And even the people who do play football, at the end of the day, you don't know how it was practiced all week. You don't know what the receiver's depth was. You assume that you know what it was, but you don't always know what it was. And so there's always more to the story than you may think. And I've used that in life too, because it's like you see something on the news, it's like there's probably more to it than that. There's almost guaranteed more to it than that. So you need to hear the whole story before you have an opinion on it. And so at the end of the day, you have to remember that with the fans, but you appreciate it. I always said, like, when I was at Michigan State, the fans were real deal at Michigan State too. They were crazy too. And so I dealt with it there in our second year as well. And it's like, you'd rather play at a place like that than a place that doesn't care at all. Why? Like, who wants to do that?
No
You know?
question. Yeah, no
so it's
question.
like-
and we're talking about a loud minority here too. The
Right.
vast majority of, and Joby, even Florida fans, the vast majority of these guys, like, they're good people. Like, they understand what we're saying. We're talking about the minority, but yeah, I mean, you obviously have handled this professionally and perfectly all the way through, which is why I wanted your opinion on that.
Well, yeah, I immediately, that's a great point, because I have looked through my messages before at times, and it's like, there's honestly, there's just as many good messages as there are bad. There's just as many people who are saying, hey, we appreciate you for how you play. You represent our school well, you represent our university, we're proud to watch you play, all that stuff. So it's like, I'm going to choose to listen to that instead of the bad stuff. I know when I'm not playing well or when I am playing well. And so I'll handle that myself. But these people that are showing the support, it's like, yeah, I appreciate that. But then there were also times, like in 21, when we had a good year. I'm seeing something. I have someone send me something on Twitter of some guy analyzing the game, saying, "Man, this is excellent. This is next level stuff they did here on this play." And I'm sitting there watching it, like, that's not even at all what I was doing there. But thanks. It sounds great. You make me look really good, but that's not. I accidentally did that. So, but thanks for hyping me up. So it all, it's all different. But
Joby, your world's the same, right? Like, I mean, the vast majority of stuff you get is positive, correct?
Yep.
And why do we?
Honestly, it's very similar. Like, church people complaints and college football complaints are very similar, because it's the person that comes to church like 2 hours a week or a month, probably, actually. And I work here 50 hours a week, and I promise we're trying to do the best we can do to glorify God and make disciples. And, you're not ever going to make everybody happy. One of the things I realized, especially during COVID, Payton, is no matter what you do, it's always three little bears, bro. For some people, it's too much. For some people, it's not enough. And for some people, it's just right. And you pick your just right people and ride or die with those. And, you got to watch it both ways. And you were kind of mentioning this. You're never as bad as your critics make you out to be, but you're also not as valuable as your fans tell you are either. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. And one of the biggest problems with social media is it kind of flattens everybody's voice, and everybody's voice seems like they have the same volume to you. And that's just not the case. Like, what your dad thinks, what your coach thinks matters a lot more than what some random guy drunk in row 8 thinks, and so you got to learn to tune those things way down. And then everything that you were talking about before, I mean, you kind of quoted Galatians 2:20. I'm crucified with Christ, no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And if you do that, then it's a lot easier to tune down the voice of everybody else, because then you realize, hey, this isn't me. The life I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And then you truly get to play for the audience of one. I shared this with somebody else. I don't know if it was Ant or if it was Brock, but one of the Bible events that I remind myself of a lot before I preach is when Jesus got baptized and the heavens open up and God the Father says, "Behold my Son, in whom I am well pleased." And Jesus had yet to take the field. He hadn't performed any assignment that the Father had given him yet. He hadn't preached, hadn't done a miracle, hadn't died on the cross, hadn't been resurrected. And before he ever performed, the Father said, "I'm really pleased in you." And so for the believer, especially the quarterback, before draft day, you need to know that before you ever go out and do and perform to see if one of the 32 teams wants you or not. Then God the Father was pleased to call you son, and he's really proud of you, bro.
Well, that's awesome. That's a good word right there. Appreciate that.
Joe, do you not have any off the wall quarterback questions for my guy Payton here?
Oh man, what would your dream scenario be? Do you have a team? Do you have a situation that you've looked at and you think, man, that'd be awesome? You come to Jacksonville, I'd put you to work at church.
Dream scenario. I'm from
Yeah.
Chicago. I've been a Bears fan my whole life, so that's probably what people would think I would say. And I do like the Bears. A cool scenario for me that I've come to realize, Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell up there is a great coach and a great quarterback coach, and I have a interesting connection to him that I found out before the year. I was fortunate enough to be voted captain again this year, and that made me a 4-time captain. And so our media people did some research and tried to find how many 4-time captains there have been in college football history. And this isn't like a 100% certified answer, but they told me the only one they found was Kevin O'Connell. And so
Wow.
I thought that was pretty cool. So it was a cool connection to him, and obviously he's had a lot of success with quarterbacks these last few years. So that would definitely be a cool situation.
So you were a 4-time captain?
Yeah, I was twice at Michigan State and then twice at Auburn. It was cool. It's definitely probably my second or third highest honor from college football.
Let us in. Well, I want to know the first one in a second, but let us in behind the scenes. How is a captain decided?
It's voted on by the team, and so at Michigan State it was voted on by the team, and I don't think we had a voting. There wasn't a point system. It was just your vote is 1 point. Everybody's vote is 1 point. So did that both years at Michigan State, and then same thing at Auburn. And it was cool at Auburn. I remember our team chaplain, Brother Chet. Unfortunately, he just passed away earlier this year, and so he is a guy that everybody at Auburn knows and loved. And I remember sitting down with him, and he asked me what my goals were when I first got there. And I got there in the summer, so I got there in May. And I said one of my goals was to be named a team captain. And the reason for that was because I went to Michigan State, and I was compared to Kirk Cousins by Coach D'Antonio, who recruited me. We have a lot of weird similarities getting to college, and that he thought that we played similarly. And then Kirk Cousins is a guy that, I watch him, and it's that's a guy you want to be like. That's a guy that you want to be a dad like he is. You want to be, everything he stands for, I agree with. And so, I looked at his records. I said, I want to break all his records. And I think I was on track to football-wise, but his main one, he was the only 3-time captain in Michigan State history. And I wanted to do that. And, I was 1-2, and then that was one of the things that was holding me back to Michigan State, but ultimately there were other things more important than that. But I wanted to get that third one at Auburn so I could at least tell him, hey, I got 3 too. I'm going to put an asterisk next to mine and say I got 3 just like you did. But so I told Brother Chet that, and he said, I think you can do it. And he said, and let's go do it. And so, after summer training and then during fall camp, we voted, and I was lucky enough to have my teammates vote me.
So what was that number 1 honor? You said that would be number 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's this number 1. It's going to be tough to ever beat in my life just because of how high I hold these guys. But there's a group called the Program, and they are people call them the Navy SEALs. A couple of them are Navy SEALs, and a couple of them are other just military, incredible military people. And they come around and they train teams all across the country, football teams, professional teams, all types of teams, men's, women's. And they came to Michigan State, and they did the whole thing with us. It's like a 2-day, 3-day thing where you wake up at 4 a.m, go in there, you swim, all that stuff. And what they had to say to me at the end was the coolest thing anybody has said to me. And they told our coach, and our coach ended up telling our team. And so, hearing that from guys that are, I think, the most elite people in the world at what they do. And, I think that, I had just an insane amount of respect for those guys. And, having that compliment was definitely they've been doing it for 13 years. And what they had to say was definitely my number 1.
Very good athlete, crazy athlete. I mean, we've already established that, right? He played multiple sports, but you watch Payton play, and very explosive,
Sure.
Great athlete. Will and I have talked about this, and Tom and I have talked about this. I think he has got a very bright future ahead of him at the NFL level. He's got every attribute, every trait to do very well at that level. Don't know if his name's going to get called, and probably, I don't know, Payton. I don't want to step out of line, but I mean, I think if you're a betting man, the odds would be you'd be a UDFA, right?
Yeah,
But it doesn't matter. Yeah, but
Right.
we hope that he gets drafted. But I think that this guy, and I think what he just said about being a four-time captain, Joby, says it better than I ever could. Like, this is the kind of guy you want in your locker room. This is the kind of guy that not just makes plays and not just makes your team better on the field, but also off the field. And just have become, a big fan. And Joby, I'm going to give you kind of the last word on this, because this is your first time meeting Payton. Is there anything that just kind of jumps out at you?
Well, if you end up in Jacksonville, I'd love for you to come and serve alongside me at this church. And mostly because of, I mean, the way you've articulated the gospel for a guy that's whole life has been built around performance. And yet the gospel means the verdict comes before the performance. And it's not based on your performance. It's based on the performance of Christ. And the way you articulated that, very few 23-year-old football players can do that. And so there's something to that, man. You should pay very close attention to it. I mean, so you play golf a lot?
I do. I haven't played yet this year. I'm trying to save my back for all this throwing I've been doing.
All right, I'll give you a gospel illustration. Tim Tebow goes to our church, and he's got this big fundraising golf tournament. It's like a pro scramble thing. And so there's all these celebrities here, and I played with Josh Scobie. He used to be the kicker for the Jags. Well, he's also trying to be a pro golfer. He's like in Q school right now. He's a scratch golfer. He's unbelievable. So we play at Sawgrass, right? And so we're playing a straight-up scramble, so just best ball, And so basically at the end of the day, we turn in our scorecards, and my team won first place. And let me tell you why it's a picture of the gospel. We step up on the tee. I hit it bad. He hits it good. We use his. We write down the good score. At the end of the day, I on my own, I don't know. I may have broke 100, but we turned in that scorecard that somebody else earned on my behalf, and I get the reward for what somebody else did. That's the gospel. And so as you step into your pro day and as you step into draft and all of that, just realize that that God is proud of you because you are in Christ and you already have the greatest prize you could ever win. And what that ought to do is free you up, man, to just let it rip, just let it rip, and then trust him with the consequences.
No doubt about that. That's a perfect illustration too. That was money.
By the way, Scobie, he's going to make a run at this senior tour thing.
Yeah, no doubt. He's good. He's
unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. Yep. But Payton, thank you, man. I appreciate it, and as you know, man, huge fan. Like, great relationship with Payton, and we'll always pull for him. And I'm serious when I say this. Like, I really, truly believe that there is a very long NFL future for this guy, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. He's got every intangible that you want to have and that you want to see. So I appreciate you taking time out of this crazy time of your life and spending some time with us, man.
Well, thank you guys a ton. It was good, chatting with you guys, and I'll definitely be coming to church when I'm in Jacksonville next time. That's for sure.
Yeah,
let's go.
For sure. Yeah, Built for More podcast, at Built for More pod. Make sure you listen. Make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a good review. We will be back shortly. Payton Thorne, once again, Auburn heading to the NFL. All right, boys.